What is poetry? When I was in graduate school, we discussed this question a lot. One of the most memorable answers to come out of our discussions was this: poetry is like pornography. I can't really tell you what it is, but I know it when I see it. Certainly, poetry has definable characteristics, which we will examine in detail over the course of the next several weeks. But there is a kind of mystery about poetry, particularly in how it is made and in terms of what makes it good or bad. This mystery seems attached to the ways in which poetry can capture the beauty of even the most ugly of human truths. Even the trusted dictionary definition seems aware of this. Poetry is a literary work in which special intensity is given to the expression of feelings and ideas by the use of distinctive style and rhythm. Poetry is a quality of beauty and intensity of emotion regarded as characteristic of poems. Poetry is something regarded as comparable to poetry in its beauty. That sunset is pure poetry. The term Ars Poetica refers to a poem that explains the art of poetry, or to a meditation on poetry that uses the form and techniques of a poem. Circa 19 BC, Horace wrote the definitive Ars Poetica, in which he advises poets on the art of writing poetry and drama. His ancient work serves as the foundation for the tradition and has had an influence on the literature of later ages, particularly on French drama. Horace's writings on the art of poetry emphasize the importance of delighting and instructing audiences. However, modern and contemporary poets argue that poems should be written for their own sake, as art for the sake of art. This term, art for art's sake, is used to convey the idea that the chief or only aim of a work of art is the self-expression of the individual artist who creates it. Thus, one way that we can understand a poem is as a poet's self-expression. But self-expression as the only qualification doesn't allow for much of a conversation about the meaning of the poem and its value to readers, and it often leads people to believe that anything can be a poem, or art for that matter. As we proceed in this course, I would like you to consider the definition of poetry. To begin, we will consider several different poets' Ars Poetica poems, as well as various poets' attempts at defining poetry. For instance, contemporary poet Dana Levin offers this meditation: Ars Poetica, or cocoons. 6 monarch butterfly cocoons clinging to the back of your throat. You could feel their gold wings trembling. You were alarmed. You felt infested. In the downstairs bathroom of the family home, gagging to spit them out, and a voice saying, "Don't, don't." Perhaps the most notable Ars Poetica comes to us from Archibald MacLeish. A poem should be palpable and mute as a globed fruit, dumb as old medallions to the thumb, silent as the sleeve-worn stone of casement ledges where the moss has grown. A poem should be wordless as the flight of birds. A poem should be motionless in time as the moon climbs, leaving as the moon releases twig by twig the night-entangled trees, leaving as the moon behind the winter leaves, memory by memory, the mind. A poem should be motionless in time as the moon climbs. A poem should be equal to, not true, for all the history of grief, an empty doorway and a maple leaf. For love, the leaning grasses and 2 lights above the sea. A poem should not mean, but be. Wallace Stevens defines a poem as a revelation in words by means of the words, and Jose Garcia Villa defines a poem as an angel with a gun in its hand. How do these poems and definitions or metaphors help us to understand what a poem is and what poetry does? Is poetry really that mysterious, that difficult to define? As we look more carefully at the characteristics and techniques of poetry, your understanding of what it is may or may not change. But I encourage you to think about all of the poems that you read. Think about what they have in common even when they seem vastly disparate. On that note, I will leave you with these final lines from the poet Charles Simic. Poetry is always the cat concert under the window of the room in which the official version of reality is being written.